Okay, so welcome. Thank you again for being here. Today we're going to work on some standing balancing work. So we're going to focus a lot more on our feet and our ankles and our lower body in general before we come up to standing. And because we are working on balance, I always suggest being close to a wall. So we're going to start in a position where we'll use the wall. We'll start in legs up the wall. But if you don't have a wall, the alternative, which I'm probably going to do just for the sake of you all being able to see me, is to have a chair. And instead of having your legs up the wall, you can have your legs on the chair like this. So, those are a couple alternatives. Other than the wall or the chair, what we're going to use is one blanket and one block. And we might use a yoga strap. You can always use something like a belt instead of a yoga strap if you don't have one handy. But that is generally where we're going. And the block, we're going to stand on it today. So if you don't have a block, if you're using something that's not as sturdy, if you're at home, you can do without it completely. Or the alternative is you can stand on the bottom step of your staircase, especially if you have a banister or a wall or something to hold on to. But as always, we can do completely without the props. If you have them, they're nice to have, but not necessary. So we're also going to be starting doing a lot of the first few things on our back, laying on the ground. And if coming down to the ground doesn't work for you, you can do it just fine sitting in your chair as well. So I'll try to remember to show you some different alternatives as we go along. All right. So to start off today, I'll give you two options. One is legs up the wall, and one is to do all the same movements in the chair. So, if you'd like to do legs up the wall, what we'll do is take your mat and bring it right up to the edge of a wall with the short edge of the mat touching the wall. And if you're doing this at home and you don't have any wall space, you can always close and lock a door so that you have something without pictures hanging on it. Um, and so for legs up the wall, the position is going to look like this. I'll just show you briefly and then I'll show you the chair version. They're just going to come down to laying on our side, roll onto our back so that your heels are resting on the wall like this. And then we're going to do some ankle and leg movements. But we do everything seated in the chair as well. And for that, we're just going to have one leg at a time out in front of us as we do these movements. And you have the option to rest your heel in a block or something like that if you like as well. So pick one of those two options. If you're going to come into legs up the wall, I will walk you through the steps of coming into that position. We don't need any props. Just make sure you've got a little bit of space around your mat so you can move. Okay. So if you'd like to do legs up the wall, the first thing to do is to come down to the ground on the side of your hip. You can scooch up as close to the wall as is comfortable. Don't try and go all the way to the wall. It's not necessary. Have your knees pointing away from your mat and have most of the mat behind you so that when you roll onto your back, you're not going to roll right off of your mat. And then just lay down onto your side and roll onto your back and let your legs swing up so that your heels are resting on the wall like this. Okay, so you can stay there if you're comfy. I'm going to rearrange and have my legs up the chair so that I can be a little easier for all of you to see. And you don't need to be right close up, bum to the wall. You can be in whatever position is actually comfortable for you. And if you're in legs up the wall, feel free to take a break whenever you need. You can always bend your knees and hug them in towards your chest when you need a break. But for now, wherever you are, just settle into the position that you've chosen, feeling your connection to the ground. If you're seated, you can feel your seat and your feet on the ground, on your chair. If you're in legs up the wall, you can feel your back resting on the ground. And take a moment or two to invite your attention inwards and just notice, how are you feeling this morning? Noticing as if you're checking in on a good friend. And then bring that attention to your breath and just observe, how does your breath feel this morning? And now you can bring one hand to your chest and one hand to your belly. And pay a little bit of attention to the movement of your breath. Just breathing naturally. Notice if you can sense a bit of a rise and fall at your chest, at your belly. All right, let your arms come back to resting wherever they're comfortable. Start to move our legs a bit. So let's start with the right leg. If you're seated, you can lift your right leg up. If you're at the wall, you can just lift your heel away from the wall a little bit. And we'll start by just flexing our foot so that your toes are pulling up towards your nose a bit and reach your heel away. So if you're on your back, you're reaching your heel up towards the ceiling. And now let's point our foot, just pointing your toes away from you, and go back and forth a couple of times. And then maybe circle your ankle a few times. Let your foot come back to stillness, but have a look at your toes and just stretch your toes nice and wide. And then scrunch them all in towards each other. And try that a couple times. Okay, and then let this leg come back to resting. Let's do that on the other side, kind of even things out here. So bringing the other leg up, flex your foot, reach your heel away, point your foot, point your toes away, back and forth a couple of times. Try a few circles. Let that go. Try some of those toe movements on this side, stretching your toes, scrunching them all together. Check when you move your toes if you're moving your fingers at the same time or if you're bracing or tensing anywhere else. See if you can move your toes without any of that extra movement or tension. Okay, let's let this go. Bring your leg back to wherever it's most comfortable. If you want, if you're on your back, you can hug your knees in towards your chest for a breath or two. All right, let your legs rest wherever they're comfortable. Let's move our arms a little bit. So we'll do some snow angel arms if you're on your back, or some easy sun breaths if you're seated. So as you inhale, reach your arms up overhead. If you're on the ground, you can kind of slide your fingers along the ground. As you exhale, lower your arms back down. Let's try it a couple of times. Okay, let that go. When you're ready, let your arms rest. Let's come back to our legs. So start off with the right leg again, lifting it up, bringing your heel away from the wall if you're in legs up the wall. And let's start with some simple rotations. So look at this leg and think about rotating your upper leg bone in your hip socket so that the leg is just rotating in and out a little bit. Doesn't need to be big circles or anything. Just think about moving at your hip joint. Nice. So your toes are turning out and turning in, but still think about the movement happening at the hip, not at your feet. The feet are just following along. All right, let's switch sides. Same thing here. Wherever you are, you can have your hands on your hip bones so that you can see if you can isolate this just to a movement of your leg in the hip socket and not the whole pelvis rocking side to side. Okay, let it go. Bring your leg back down. Take a moment, just breathe. All right, now we're going to do a figure four stretch. And I'll show you the version at the wall first, and then I'll show you the version in the chair. So if you've got both legs up the wall, what we're going to do is lift the right heel away from the wall. Keep your left heel resting on the wall. And on the right leg, just add a little bit of external rotation so your toes are turned out a bit. And now bend your knee and just cross your ankle over the other ankle. Just stay right up, ankle to ankle to start off with. And now bring your hands to your hip bones so you can have some awareness of what's happening at your pelvis when we do this movement. And just slide your right ankle down the left leg. See how far you can comfortably go without your hips needing to shift around at all. And wherever you land, we're going to stay right here. And you can try to press your knee away from you towards the wall without using your hands. And take a few breaths here. So now I'll show you at the chair. And we're going to do the same kind of thing in a seat, ankle over ankle like this, or if it's comfortable, ankle over knee like this. And here you can do the same kind of action of pressing your knee away by just pressing your knee down towards the ground, whether you're here or whether you're here. Okay, so take another breath or two, whichever version you're in. And then let's let that go. Unravel your legs, just bring them back to a resting place. And if you want, you can give your legs a little bit of a shake out, a little bit of a wiggle, any which way you'd like. Okay, let's do that on the other side. So, left leg, if you're at the wall, just bring your heel away from the wall a bit, add a little bit of external rotation, bend your knee, cross ankle over ankle, slide that ankle down your leg. See how far you can go without your hips needing to shift around at all. And here's your figure four stretch. You can add that action of pushing your knee away. And if you're seated in the chair, it's same options, ankle over ankle or ankle over knee. See what works for you and take a few breaths. And maybe one more breath if you'd like. And when you're ready to let it go, unravel your legs. Bring them back to a resting place and just take a breath or two. Maybe notice how everything feels now. Notice your hips and your legs and your ankles. Okay. And now, if you're seated in your chair, you can stay right where you are. But if you're on your back, bring your knees in towards your chest. Give yourself a little hug. Have a bit of a rock from side to side. And then make your way all the way over to resting on your side. And we're gonna slowly, slowly come up to a seat. Really take your time with that. I'm just gonna move my chair out of the way here. And the next movement you can do either sitting on the floor with your knees bent and your feet in front of you, or if you're seated in a chair, just stay right where you are. Okay. So now we're going to move our toes a little bit. So just sit whatever way is comfortable so that your feet can be flat on the ground. And we're going to move our big toes to start with. So sometimes you might like to sit so that you can see your toes. I know I always like that when I'm trying to ask my toes to move, but whatever's comfy. And now just try to lift your big toes up off the ground. The other four toes can stay down if possible and let it go. And try that a couple of times. Just the big toe, lift and lower. And they might not listen to you. That's okay. Just try. See if your brain and your toes want to talk to each other. Maybe notice what parts of your leg are lighting up when you try to do this subtle little movement. Let's switch it up. Big toes can stay down. Lift the other four toes. Try that one a couple of times. And now notice as you try these toe movements, are you holding your breath? Are you bracing anywhere? Can you move the toes without that? Might not want to cooperate. That's okay. Just play around with it. Okay, let it go. Give them a bit of a shake. Maybe shake out your whole legs. Awesome. Okay, and we're gonna go up to standing, but before we do, we'll get a prop ready. If you've got a blanket or a towel, we're gonna roll it up and use that for a calf stretch. If you don't have a blanket, you can always just roll up your mat and use that instead. So if you do have your blanket, just grab an edge of it and roll it up and try and roll it nice and tightly so that when you do step onto it, it's not gonna completely flatten. Yeah, and same thing if you're using your mat, just roll it up enough so that when you step on it, it's going to have a little bit of height to it. So, all right, and make your way up to your feet when you're ready. Okay, so once you're up here, you can have that rolled blanket or rolled mat nearby, but just start off by standing both feet nice and flat on the ground, arms resting by your sides. Take a moment to just feel the connection between your feet and the ground. And as you stand naturally, just notice as you pay attention to your feet, how is your weight distributed on your feet? You don't need to change anything, just kind of find your baseline. Are you leaning more to one foot or the other, more forward or back? Get familiar with that. Let's just go side to side a little bit. Shift your weight over to your right foot and your left, back and forth a couple of times. And so forward and back a little bit. And then come back to your center. And let's shift our weight over to one foot. And you can either just come up onto your tippy toes on the other foot, or you could lift it right off the ground if that feels steady enough. And come on over to the wall if you want a bit of balance support as well. And just notice where your weight is on your standing foot. Does it feel different than when you're standing on both feet? Let's try it on the other side. Shift your weight over, toes to the ground or foot lifted. Just notice what you notice and breathe easy as you stand. Let it go, shake it out a little bit. All right, bring your hands to your hips so you can kind of feel roughly where your hip bones are. Shift your weight over to your right foot again. This time, just come up onto your tippy toes on the other foot. And we're going to do some rotation here. So, still think about moving from your hip joint to rotate the leg out and in. Try that back and forth a few times and notice your hips want to come along for the ride. See if you can move your legs so that your pelvis and your spine and everything else can stay nice and still. It's just this leg moving. Okay, let's switch and do that on the other side. Nice. Think about nice smooth movement. Your breath can flow smoothly at the same time. Okay, let it go. Maybe give everything a bit of a shake. Take a breath. Okay, and let's use that blanket roll or mat roll, whatever you've got. So bring it onto your mat if you're using the blanket. And what we're going to do is stand right close to the blanket roll and then bring one foot up so that the toe side of your foot is on the blanket roll and your heel is on the ground. And our intention is to get a bit of a stretch in the calf. So if you feel a big stretch here, stay right here. The other option is to step the other foot in front of the blanket or the mat. I mean, wherever you are, how is your weight distributed on your feet? Are you leaning one way or the other? Can you kind of even that out so that you're using both feet? Let's take another breath or two. Gently step back, both feet to the ground. Maybe give your legs a bit of a shake out. And let's do that on the other side. Nice. So pick the version that you'd like. You can even start with a few breaths with your foot behind and then have a few breaths with the foot ahead. Sometimes for a bit of balance support, I like to bring all of my fingertips together like this. I find that helpful. I don't know why. You could try it if you want. Breathe easy. Notice if you're tensing anywhere. Notice if you're holding your breath. Notice how your weight is distributed on your feet. Really being with this nice stretch. Okay, we'll let this one go as well. When you're ready, give everything a shake. Okay, and now we're going to do a bit of a stretch for the top of the foot. So it'll look like this. We're just going to step one foot back, place the top of your toes on the ground, and take a few breaths here. You might want to come close to the wall for a bit of support here. If this gives you foot cramps, then just forget about it. Do something else. If you'd like to ease the movement up a little bit, what you can do is step your foot back and just rest your toes on your blanket or your mat like this. So, a few different options. Try it out, see what works for you. Let's take another breath or two here. You can have that same hand position if you like, if you found that supported for the first movement we did or the first stretch we did. Okay, let it go when you're ready. Maybe have a little bit of movement in your ankle before you come back to standing on that foot. Switching sides when you're ready. Okay, when you feel like you're kind of even side to side, let it go. Give everything a bit of a shake, give that ankle a bit of movement, see what your legs would like. Nice. All right, come back to standing easy on your mat. Rest your arms. Take a few nice, gentle breaths. And tune into the bottom of your feet again. Just notice how your weight is distributed, how the bottom of your feet feel on the ground. Okay, how's everyone doing? All right. Okay, so just stand with your feet a little bit wider apart now, wherever you're comfortable. And we're just going to shift our weight side to side again. And just noticing that feeling of a little more weight in one foot and then the other. And then bring your feet a little bit wider. Do the same thing. You can bend your knee on the side that you're leaning towards if you'd like. Just try and keep both feet flat on the ground. And if you like, you can step your feet a little bit wider apart. Keep trying this out. Okay, pause wherever you are. And we're going to add a little bit of a forward fold here. So bring your hands to your hips. And we're just going to hinge at our hips to fold forward. And we're not going to go very far. But what I want you to pay attention to is, are you able to fold at your hips, or does your back want to do the folding forward? So encourage your back to stay nice and neutral. Try to hinge at your hips. And just go back and forth a couple of times. Maybe starting holding just a tiny bit, slowly doing a little bit more, just warming up your hips. You might notice your hamstrings on the back of your legs a little bit as you try this. Okay, and you can stick with this movement down and up a few times, or if you want to go into more of a wide leg forward fold, you can have your block or your chair handy so that when you fold forward, you can have your hands resting on your block or on your chair if you've got it like this. So if you want one of those props, you can grab it. I'm going to turn at a bit of an angle here so I can show you another option. So you can stick with just down and up. You can come all the way into a forward fold with your hands on one of those props. It's up to you. Check if you're folding forward and have your hands down on the block, that you're not rounding your back too much. You can always bring that block up to a higher level if you'd like. And now you can stay here for a breath or two, or you can add a bit of that side to side movement. Shifting your weight over to one foot, bending that knee as you go to that side. Just go side to side, both feet staying flat on the ground. Nice. All right, let it go. Come on back to center. With strong legs, come all the way back up to standing. Nice. Walk your feet back towards each other. Maybe give everything a little bit of a wiggle. Okay. So if you've got a block, you can bring it over towards the wall. We'll use that in a minute. Okay. So we've been stepping our legs wide and shifting side to side. Now we're going to try stepping one foot in front of the other and see how far you can step over while keeping both feet on the floor. So let's start with just left over right to start with. Step your foot over, shift your weight over so that you're kind of evenly distributing your weight. Notice if that other foot is lifting off the ground, and then maybe make that step a little smaller. Just try it out. It's nice and awkward. Give it a go. Switch sides when you're ready. Come on back to standing in a more natural position. Let's do a bit of front to back. So same kind of idea. Step your foot forward, but try and keep both feet on the ground. So you come into kind of a tiny lunge as you step one foot forward and then step it back. Just think of this as exploring the movement. Does not have to be the biggest movement in the world. Just see where can you step so that you can keep both feet on the ground. And how does that feel in your legs? Get a bit of stretch. Where do you feel that? Okay, if you've been doing just one leg, let's do the other one now. If you've been alternating, just keep on going. Come on back to center when you're ready. Shake it out. Come on back to just standing easy. Rest your arms, soften your shoulders. Take a breath. All right. And now let's come towards the wall and we will use the block if you'd like to stand one foot onto. If you're at home and you don't have a block, you can come to a set of stairs and we'll just step onto the bottom step. And if you want to use a cork block, you're welcome to grab one of those as well because they're a little bit more sturdy. It's totally up to you though. Okay, so we're going to stand close to the wall or a chair so you have a bit of balance support, or if you're at your staircase, a banister or a wall. And what we're going to do is step one foot up onto the block or the step. Come up like this so that you can have one hand on the wall for a bit of support. I am going to turn this way so that you can see my free leg. So you can start with that foot on the floor, and the foot on the block can be bent. Hand on the wall for a bit of support, and then just straighten the foot on the leg, so on the foot on the block, so that you can have your toes touching the ground with the free leg. Nice. And now flex your foot so that both feet are kind of level with each other. Bring your hand to your hip, and we're just going to start with a swing. So just let that leg swing as much as you'd like to, so that you still feel steady. See if you can let your leg feel nice and heavy as you swing. And as you go, you can kind of notice what's happening in your hip bones as you swing your leg. They're probably moving along with the leg. You can probably feel your low back moving a little bit. Just let your leg come back to stillness. Let it hang. And now we're going to try to do that leg swing, but this time, can you keep your pelvis fairly still? So see how far you can actually move without moving your pelvis or your low back. And it's challenging, especially when you extend your leg and bring it back behind you. There's not a lot of movement. So just explore. Breathe easy as you do. And then come on back to center. And let's do some rotations here. So I'm just going to kind of turn to the side so you can see what I mean. I'm just going to rotate, same thing, at the hip joint. Think about rotating your upper leg bone in your hip socket, just like this, in and out. Nice. And can you rotate your leg without moving your pelvis? Just see if it's possible. Sometimes I like to have one hand on the front and one hand on the back of my pelvis like this so I can notice if there's any of this kind of movement happening. Okay, if you like, you can just give your leg a little bit of a shake before we let the side go. Come on down to the ground. Have a bit of a shake in your legs. Come on back to standing in neutral. Just notice how everything feels. Does one leg feel different than the other? Do they feel kind of even? side to side. Okay, let's switch sides. Same thing here. Take your time. When you're ready, come up to balancing just on the leg that is standing on the block with your feet kind of even with each other. Have a bit of a nice free swing. Let that leg feel nice and heavy. With your hand on your hip, try that and see how much movement you seem to have without your pelvis moving. It's kind of tough. Just exploring, noticing how much movement is there when you just try to move the leg, not your back, not your pelvis. Let that go. Give your leg a little shake if you'd like. Try some of those rotations now. Nice. All right, when you're ready to let this go, come on back down to the ground. Give everything a bit of a shake. Take a breath. Notice what you notice when you pay attention to your feet and your legs, or anything else, really. Okay. So now we're going to put some of those pieces together and play around with a dancing tree pose. So for this one, you can be either at the wall for a bit of balance support, or you can just be on your mat. Doesn't matter. I'm going to show you generally what it's going to look like, and then we're going to try it all together. So first, we're going to try out tree pose and kind of see how that feels in your body. And then we're going to do tree and incorporate some of these movements that we were doing, stepping forward and back and side to side. So we'll start with our tree pose, and I'll just show you to start with. And then from tree, we'll come out to stepping that foot out to the side, and then back to tree, stepping your foot over in front, back to tree, stepping your foot forward, back to tree, and stepping your foot back. And now between all those movements, you can do your tree and touch your toe down and then step out and touch your toe down. You don't have to go straight from this position to this position. That's an option if you want to challenge your balance. And it's easier if you've got a wall for a bit of support. So there's options for you there. You can also have your chair handy for a bit of support. So you can get yourself set up close to the wall or not. It's up to you. And we'll start by doing a tree pose all together. Simple, simple. So at least one hand on your hip. You can have one hand on the wall or the chair if you like, but have a little bit of awareness of what's going on in the pelvis. So we'll shift our weight over to, let's start with the right leg as the standing leg. Come up onto your left tippy toes. And then just find some external rotation. Turn your knee out to the side. Not so much that your hips have to turn. Just see how much movement is there with just the leg rotating. And then you can bring your foot in so that your heel is close to your ankle. Or if your balance feels great today, you can have your foot up on the inside of the standing leg. Find what level works for you. And then if you like, you can add a different hand position. If you've got a hand at the wall, you can have one hand here towards the center of your chest as if you have your hands together. Let's take a breath. And then come on back to standing. Shift your weight over to the other side. Let's do the same thing on the other side. Start with knee bent, toes to the ground, add some external rotation. Bring your foot in, ankle and heel touching, or you can walk your foot up inside of the standing leg. You can take a different hand position if you like. Wherever you are, breathe, breathe easy. And unravel back to standing. Add a little bit of movement. Take a moment of stillness. Okay, now we're going to add in all those other little steps. So we'll start with our right leg is our standing leg. At least one hand on your hip. Bend your knee, find your external rotation. Bring your foot in for your tree pose. Take a breath here. Now we're going to bring this leg back down and step it out to the side. Nice. Still keeping both feet on the floor as you do. Now come back in towards the center. Shift your weight over to your right foot. Come back to your tree pose. Maybe you step your toe down between those movements. That's up to you. And then take this leg down and step it in front of the standing leg. Place it down so that both feet are flat on the ground, wherever that needs to be for you. And then come on back to your tree. Nice. And this time we're going to step this foot forward. See how far you can step with both feet on the ground. And back to your tree. And then we'll step that foot back. Same thing as before. Both feet on the floor. Nice. Come on back to tree. Okay, and now we're just gonna keep going. Keep going through those movements. You can go at your own pace. You can take as much time as you want in each movement. Just breathe easy as you go. And maybe you can really keep your attention in your feet as you go through all these different movements. Your feet and your ankles and your legs. Next time you come back to center, stay here. Both feet down to the ground. Everything a bit of a wiggle. When you're ready, take a moment of stillness to just breathe. Let's do that on the other side. So, left leg, we are standing leg this time. Bend the right leg, toes to the ground. Turn your knee out only as far as you can without your hips wanting to come along. Bring your foot in for your tree pose, wherever that might be. Nice. Let's start with just about a breath here. And then release this leg, step it out to the side. Come back to your tree when you're ready. Nice. Step that leg in front, cross it over. And back on your tree again. Step your leg forward. And back to tree. And back. Nice. And just keep going with this pattern. Take your own pace. You don't need to go as quick as I'm going. Try it a few times. Maybe one more time through these movements. Feel free to let it go if you're done with it, though. And the next time you come back to center, let it go. Give everything a bit of a wiggle. Come back to standing easy, arms resting, shoulders soft. Breathe easy. And before we come back to a resting pose, let's just do a few sun breaths to finish off with. Tune into the rhythm of your own breath. And as you inhale, reach your arms up. Draw your palms together. Trace your hands down the center line of your body. Try that a couple more times. Next time you bring your hands down, let it go. And just notice, is there anything else that wants a bit of a stretch or movement before we come back to resting? Okay. All right. Let's come down to sitting or laying on the ground or in your chair. And we're going to come down just for the purpose of resting for a little bit. So take a moment to just get yourself comfortable. You can lay on your back or your side. You can sit in your chair or on the ground. 100% up to you. While you get set up, I will go turn the lights down here in the room. And when you found a comfortable position, tune in, really notice how you feel. See if there's any little adjustments that you could make to feel even more comfortable. And then take a few deeper breaths. With each inhale, picture inviting in a little bit more softness. And with each exhale, picture letting go of any tension you might be holding, letting go of any kind of effort at all. And just give yourself permission to do absolutely nothing other than resting. Stay here for a few more minutes.